In the United States, in the Middle East, we observe that a completely untamed conflict has commenced in Palestine, in the Gaza region. We see constant, sharp conflicts arising in different places all the time. But there is something we do not see. For instance, we scarcely hear anything about what is happening in Myanmar, the former Burma. And there are also different intriguing occurrences taking place there. What occurs in Russia is highly revealing, because when the President and the Supreme Commander-in-Chief discuss the fact that there should be individuals in right who have undergone military service and not others, it is akin to a novel concept. Why the heck is all of this happening? What is the reason behind the shit hitting the fan? Although it seemed like, well, first of all, let me say a few words about the current economy. The fact is, the stories regarding dinosaurs are akin to stating that the economy of the United States of America underwent a soft landing or a smooth descent. Well, that is the end of it. The crisis is over, and economic growth has started. That is what officials from the Western countries are saying. For instance, last week, the Secretary of the Treasury, that is the Minister of Finance of the United States of America, Janet Yellen, enthusiastically discussed it. Our officials are also engaged in conversations about it. At the same time, the analysis of macroeconomics shows completely ambiguous results that are difficult to interpret and can vary greatly depending on the specific factors and variables considered in the study. I gather with a bunch of pals on a weekly basis as a matter of course. It's a regular occurrence that I look forward to without fail. Macroeconomic reviews by Mikhail Khazin's Economic Research Fund, which are released on Saturdays as a summary of the work week, are provided by the Fund for Public Access and Analysis. And I can state that when you clarify that you have a substantial increase in growth at the conclusion of the year, for example, let's say 3.4%, it is similar to, a rough approximation because it is an initial evaluation. However, in the third quarter, the United States of America demonstrated, in my perspective, a staggering 4.9, which is simply an inconceivable expansion. At the same time, the duration of your average work week is decreasing, transitioning from 34.4 hours to 34.3 hours, indicating a slight decline in the amount of time dedicated to work activities. This is, of course, a minor decline, but it is a freaking conservative indicator that practically no one pays attention to, which is the reason why it is not falsified. So, when you experience a simultaneous economic growth and a reduction in the length of the work week, it makes me want to shout, "I don't believe it," just like Stanislavski would. Due to the fact that, for a simple reason, because when any employer, at the onset of economic growth, primarily seeks to maximize the utilization of the existing labor force that is already in place and available for work, she is already knowledgeable, she is already prepared. To escalate the intensity, you do not need to take any action. Merely need to make a small adjustment to slightly increase the power load and ensure it is within the desired range for optimal performance. Hiring additional employees is always a pain in the neck. More individuals are arriving, necessitating retraining, potential new machine purchases, and considerations for insurance and other matters that need attention. So, similar to, this is a genuine problem that needs to be addressed in a serious manner. That is the reason why, when economic growth commences, the work week automatically increases immediately without any delay or hesitation. And in the event that it is shrinking, that signifies that there is an absence of economic growth and development. And immediately the question arises, where did the numbers originate from, and why did it turn out in this manner? Well, the source of the numbers can be easily explained, we can confidently say. The fact of the matter is, in the United States of America, for many decades now, there has been a technology in place where the growth of asset value is translated into added value. This system has allowed for the conversion of increased asset worth into tangible benefits. It has been a key factor in driving economic progress and incentivizing investment in the country. So, similar to, you are a large company, and you possess a number of assets on your balance sheet, for example, let's say securities or other valuable holdings, they are increasing in price, you may not exchange them based on cost. So they were basically on your balance, bought there for $100 and remained at $100. Can you translate them in a way that they will be worth, and they will be, like on the stock market, already worth not $100 but $200? And you can evaluate them for $150. And thus your assets on the balance sheet will increase. And you state that is the meaning of added value. This is the outcome of our diligent efforts. Naturally, this is an occupation, implying that it must be executed with excellence, but this system is highly established. And as a result, we ultimately find ourselves in some truly fantastic situations. What was previously considered to have undergone an increase in added value, while the tangible assets that currently exist within the economy have not experienced any growth or expansion in their overall magnitude. Continuing, step second. The thing is, by a whole bunch of indicators like industrial data, the Reserve Banks of the United States of America, overall data, the industry as a whole, the economy, construction data, primarily residential, there's a downturn happening. And he has been going on for an extended period of time, for numerous months. And right away the question arises, what is the economic cause? Do we have any economic growth? The issue is, from an economic standpoint, speaking. Yeah, by the way, I gotta point out that the claim that there's low unemployment in the United States of America is not entirely accurate. The point is, when we talk about unemployment, we are referring to those individuals who do not have any job or employment whatsoever. In the United States of America, they have a really creative approach to dealing with the unemployed. For example, if you sold a little vase for $30 on a website similar to our Avito, then in this case you automatically exit the ranks of the unemployed and enter the section called entrepreneurs. Oh, and a multitude of other things. Moreover, nobody demonstrates the true nature of full employment, encompassing all work-related insurance and similar aspects and so forth, and so on. How does she relate to part-time work? Because it turns out that part-time jobs are growing in comparison to full-time positions, and so on and so forth. Owing to the nature of our show, I am not going to get into numbers and show graphs right now. That is not something I will be discussing at this particular moment in time. It is not possible to watch them on the screen at all. Those who are interested can refer to the reviews of the Khazin Foundation, where all the pictures are provided for viewing purposes by the foundation. For individuals who are interested in the performance of the fund and its growth, I suggest taking a look at Vladimir Levchenko's Telegram channel, to whom I have posed inquiries multiple times during this program regarding the current situation. Perhaps it is the right time to pay him another visit. Give him a call, but you also need to incorporate the essential economic reasons that account for what is currently taking place. Why is everything taking place at such a sluggish pace and with such seamless fluidity? And here I am referring to the economic theory that we developed with a group of Russian economists in the late 1990s, the most well-known of whom are Andrei Borisovich Kobyakov and Oleg Vladimirovich Grigoriev, who unfortunately has already passed away due to unforeseen circumstances. And within the pages of our book, authored by Kobyakov, it is titled The Empire's Sunset, capturing the essence of the decline of the empire. End of it. The American, released 20+ years ago in 2003, and in my book, Memories of the Future, explains in detail the distinction between the cyclical crisis, also known as the crisis of overproduction, and the structural crisis we're currently facing. Well, one of the reasons why I am speaking alone today, and I wanted to tell you about it. So what is the overproduction crisis? In a market economy with a private banking system that is of utmost importance, entrepreneurs base their decisions on an optimistic assessment of the situation, the evaluation of the current circumstances. This assessment significantly influences their choices and actions. shaping the overall economic landscape and determining the course of the market. The scariest thing that can happen to an entrepreneur is if they didn't make enough profit. On this here reason, if y'all got yourself some mighty fine economic growth, say a recovery after the previous crisis of about a year and a half, 2, sometimes even 3 years, there can be a pretty darn high rate of growth. It starts adjusting itself to what will be such growth and maxing out on credit for the future rise in demand. They're taking money from the banks. Well, all right, today they can be printed, but in the 19th century, when the dollar or another currency was tied to gold, how could they be printed? And here the banking multiplier effect is operating. The fact is, when you borrow money from a bank, you don't actually withdraw the funds from the bank, not to mention from the entire banking system. You possess an open account, therefore these funds are currently residing in the account. Additionally, you bear an obligation to the bank. The bank has the ability to utilize the funds already present in your credit account in order to provide a loan to another individual. As a consequence, the amount of the loan exceeds the available money supply. If it turns out unexpectedly that the bank does not have any funds at all, the bank can, in turn, take a loan against the collateral of the asset that represents your obligations to the bank, thereby obtaining the necessary funds to fulfill its obligations. And as a consequence, the total amount of money in the economy is significantly greater than the amount of physical cash in circulation, indicating an imbalance between the two. In a typical economy, the range for this credit multiplier is usually between 4 and 6. If it is significantly smaller, it indicates that businesses are unable to handle even a normal workload. And there is this effect that in the 1990s in Russia obtained the name payment crisis. However, if, conversely, they borrow excessive amounts, particularly when financial systems begin lending to one another, then in this scenario, the multiplier experiences significant growth. A factor in the 2008 crisis was the multiplier at 17, adding to the severity of the situation. A whole lot. So, the amount of the loan far exceeded the normal needs of the economic system. What is the precise essence and characteristics of the present-day Western economic system that is prevalent in the modern world? The issue at hand is that, on one hand, starting from 1981, they granted permission to households, that is, individuals residing in a particular residence, and not solely to corporations or organizations, to partake in specific activities such as refinance your debt just like the government does. The government is taking out a new loan even before they pay off the old one. For ordinary people, this was prohibited for a considerable period of time. The sole exemption was the mortgage, but the mortgage was consistently supported by the government, and there were distinct regulations in that regard. And now, as a result, you have the option to acquire a new loan without settling the outstanding balance of the previous one. Those who are interested have the opportunity to freely examine my fairy tale about a washing machine on the internet, where I provide a detailed explanation in such a light-hearted manner of how this mechanism operates and functions. In addition, if you possess an emission financial system, also known as fiat currencies, then you have the capability to lend. The central bank has the authority to lend to the banking system and furnish it with a significantly greater amount of money, thereby enhancing its financial resources and providing it with a substantial boost in liquidity. As a result, what does the financial system start doing? She starts lending to manufacturers, but the manufacturers hit a demand limitation. In the car manufacturing industry, selling the cars you produce is crucial. If a potential buyer lacks the necessary funds, the sale cannot be made. But if someone provided funds for this, then in this particular situation you would gladly sell your car. To put it differently, you experience simultaneous stimulation of both the producer and the consumer. What was the reason behind the creation of such a system? This action was taken because in the 1970s, another structural crisis started, which was linked to the inability to increase demand. And we had to devise a new mechanism to boost demand. Thus, we have the year 1981. Most likely, this concept, which later became known as Reaganomics, was associated with the activities of the then head of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker. But that's not the point. Who came up with all this? The thing is, it was thought up and implemented. And as a result, however, the objective was political. We had to experience a crisis in order to ensure that it did not commence prior to the time it did in the USSR. Let's be honest. The collapse of the USSR was largely a result of the fact that the United States of America came up with a way to overcome the crisis of the 70s, while the USSR faced a similar crisis. Related to the fact that it was not possible to stimulate demand using outdated methods that were no longer effective. It didn't lead to anything, so they haven't figured out how to stimulate demand. They just started printing money, and as a result, at some point due to the economic crisis, the USSR began to fall apart. Currently, economically, the USA have found themselves in a situation comparable to the USSR in the late 80s. The USSR was limited by the Western system, the United States of America. The dollar system is limited by the scale of the global economy. You are unable to go beyond the planet. The query is, what is preventing us from printing money and continuing to enhance demand, production, and overall economic growth? There are a few reasons here. Firstly, we partially encountered an increase in resource demand, which led to some challenges. Therefore, production in numerous regions has become excessively expensive due to high costs. That is actually the reason why they began to enter the IT industry. In the IT industry, there are some quite high expenses. You need to construct data centers and things, but nonetheless, they are not resource intensive. So when it comes to the production of data centers, you do not require any additional resources apart from electricity and a small amount of metals that are needed for their construction. Besides, we had to figure out what kind of demand to attribute to people. The thing is, people, they're just conservative. In essence, you do not desire a peculiar gadget unless you fully grasp the purpose behind its necessity. You would instead have a preference for acquiring a high-quality automobile that bears resemblance to the one owned by your neighbor. And for this reason, it was necessary to fundamentally change the structure of demand. So they came up with this so-called Green Revolution, and simultaneously, they initiated the process of washing away things from the demand structure that are fundamentally important to people. The initial action they commenced was the removal of housing units, which was the first thing they started to take out. Rental housing has always played a huge role here in the good old United States of America. However, the propaganda among young individuals argues, why would you require ownership when you can simply lease it? So, in other words, this colossal amount of money that was going towards the demand for housing, they started redirecting it towards the demand for all sorts of gadgets. And of course, you could also reduce the amount of money a little bit. So basically, if before a young family's first attempt was to take out a mortgage and spend, let's say, $50,000, it takes a year to pay off this mortgage. Now, people don't take out mortgages, they rent instead, buy gadgets. But the total amount of money that a young family has is no longer $50,000, but less. So in other words, you have the ability to somewhat diminish the standard of living and the income level. However, the main point to consider is this. Due to the fact that there is currently no new demand, your cash flow, which is allocated towards making loan repayments, is gradually getting smaller and smaller in size, posing a significant challenge to your financial stability and ability to meet your obligations. So in other words, it was implicitly assumed that this year the total volume amounted to, so to speak, 5 trillion, in a year 5,500, in another year 6, well, and so gradually increasing. And at this moment it transpires that in actual terms, without taking inflation into consideration, the monetary return cyclically diminishes on each cycle due to the absence of any additional demand, resulting in a reduction in the amount of money earned during each cycle. Different methods are employed. For example, in 2020 there was a significant increase in household incomes through budget expenditures, resulting in a sharp increase in the budget deficit of the United States. Budget expenditures also increased sharply. However, it is impossible to repeat such operations due to the inflationary wave that occurred in 2021 to 2022 as a result of the expenditure increase in 2020. It is important to carefully consider the long-term implications of budgetary decisions to avoid adverse effects on the economy in the future. Now it appears they have decreased it, but the cost of this has been the de-industrialization of the United States of America. The official statistics, they acknowledge that their sector is experiencing a decline. Yes, they mention zone, but in this area. But the financial market is growing. The trouble is that the financial market can sharply drop at any given moment, unlike the real sector. Furthermore, the United States of America are becoming increasingly reliant on external supplies as their dependence on them continues to grow. So, on February 10th, there will be the traditional annual conference organized by the Khazin Foundation, and I will have 2 big presentations there. The first will be dedicated to the economic relations between the United States and China. And this here is a truly fascinating topic regarding how all of this is going to develop in the future. But we keep on going. So somewhere around the fall of the 21st year in the United States of America, a classic structural crisis began. A structural crisis is different from a cyclical one and is related to the fact that expanding the economy within existing markets is impossible. That is the end, indicating that the market potential has been entirely utilized and depleted. Crises like this have happened thrice in the capitalist economy's history in the last 150 years. In 1907 to 1908, they were characterized by a prolonged depression. In the 8th grade, both of them are mandatory, and their conditions are a long depression. Ended in 14 for the U.S. The second crisis is the crisis of 1930 to 1932, and that's when the Great Depression began for the United States of America. The third crisis, due to the USSR's existence, passed without a sharp turn, and there was a pure depression from 1971 to the beginning of ergonomics, 1981. 10 years. In 81, when ergonomics began, it was a decade ago. By the way, it was during that period in the USSR that the scientific study of the inevitable crisis of capitalism thrived and gained significant prominence, precisely due to the fact that this crisis was evident. Another issue is that for some undisclosed reason, Soviet economists and even politicians did not fully comprehend that the construction that Paul Volcker and his fellow economists, policymakers, and advisors came up with during their collaborative efforts. Yes, this thing was certainly time-limited, but it is similar to that famous old joke that everyone knows and loves for its timeless humor. When fleeing from a bear in a group, the key is not to run faster than others, but to ensure someone runs slower than you. This is because when the bear catches up to them, they will be unable to continue running. In this sense, the United States came to the conclusion back then, in the late 70s, that they needed to make a leap at any cost because the USSR was in an economic crisis. It's unclear whether it will be able to recover or not. However, as we discovered, he was unable to escape. Thus, the peculiarity of this structural crisis is that it develops at a much slower pace in comparison to the cyclical crisis, taking a significantly longer time to unfold and reach its full impact. Crisis is severe, economy can decline sharply by 8 to 12%, and in 32, it fell by 35%. But in 32, it dropped 35%. Following that, he bounces back with remarkable speed. If we take a closer look at the crisis of the 1970s, we can observe that there were also two significant downturns in the economy. Modern Western science discovers a period of growth in that region during the mid-1970s, but it is highly probable that this finding is merely an attempt to align the outcome with the principles of liberal economic theory. In reality, there are two waves of decline happening there. So, basically, the economy took a nosedive in the early 70s, let me remind you. On August 15, 1971, the United States of America declared default, refusing to exchange the dollar for gold. And after that, the decline began, which then stopped in 1974 to 1975, and then fell asleep. However, we are not going to be comparing and studying statistical methods again, which the Western metric science uses. That is pretty pointless. Let us just note that this is not a productive use of our time and resources. Instead, we should focus on more meaningful and practical approaches to our research and analysis. The decline that comes before this depression is structural, and it proceeds in a very smooth manner, exhibiting a gradual and consistent downward trend. Unlike cyclic, when there is a sharp decline and an equally sharp rise, and the structural decline is very slow. In the 30s, the current situation is very similar to the situation in the 30s. The decline rate was about 1% of GDP per month. VVP stands for value added per month. You have to keep in mind that since the government is lending a hand, the overall decline amounts to not 10% per year, but somewhere around 8%. Today's situation is even worse, around 6 to 7%. So if we take a look at the American economy from the fall of 2021, we will see that in the real sector, taking into account the underestimation of inflation, these declines of 6–7% are exactly what we get. This indicates the impact of inflation on the economy, highlighting the need for accurate measurement and analysis of economic indicators. So, in other terms, in the United States of America and in the global economy, there has been a structural downturn since the autumn of 2021. And here is the most important thing. I am far from thinking that the individuals who occupy positions in the leadership of the United States Department of the Treasury or the Federal Reserve System of the United States, sometimes they are the same individuals, like Janet Yellen. They do not have a clear understanding of what is going on, what is happening currently. So they cannot not see this decline that is taking place. Additionally, a special military operation has demonstrated and revealed that the United States of America has significant problems in the sense that, despite the money invested, including in the defense industry, they are completely incapable of achieving any form of economic growth, not even in the industrial sector. In Russia, mind you, in the year 1922, investing money in defense and consequently in related industries led to significant economic growth in the 23rd year of the 20th century, which had a positive impact on the overall economy. The fact of the matter is the monetary authorities intentionally put a stop to this growth. By the way, this is an amazing thing that, at the moment, continues to amaze me. There is an ongoing election campaign that nobody discusses, and we currently have a restored preferential mortgage. One of the crucial tools for supporting citizens has stopped due to the policies of the central bank and Ministry of Finance. I am just waiting to see who is going to say something about it. And we wrote about it. We talked to Levchenko in the summer of 2023 last year, that the main social negative of raising the rate will be that the mortgage will stop functioning, causing potential financial difficulties for homeowners. They tell us, yeah, right, no way, everything will be fine, they know what to do. So here we see, and the mortgage has come to a halt. But let's return to the basic economy. The monetary authorities of the United States of America undoubtedly perceive and understand the significance of this picture. Do they console themselves with the fact that their stock market is growing? Do they console themselves with any other indicators? In the most recent review of the Kharkov Fund, I shared a link to the analysis by Pavel Ryabov, an impressive individual from our team who, despite being young, demonstrated that, overall, the financial system of the United States of America is well-balanced and in a stable condition. There is no doubt that she is balanced, because that is what the money authorities in the United States of America know how to do, unlike ours. But the trick is that in the process, the reality of this sector collapses. Here's the matter at hand. What is the extent of time that the financial sector can endure when circumstances are truly going downhill and facing significant challenges? Two options: cut financial sector, but that's impossible. We need to bring it down. Because it is the location where all the money goes in order to provide support for the demand that exists. Either we need to stimulate demand through additional methods of emission or through additional emission techniques. However, once you begin the process of printing money, you will inevitably face the adverse consequences of high inflation. And you can already see it. Based on the current situation, by the end of 2023, the monetary authorities eased up on tightening credit and monetary policy just a little bit. Essentially, they sort of decreased the speed of withdrawing funds from the actual industry sector. As a consequence, inflation soared rapidly. Once again, in my initial review after the new year, I clearly demonstrated this alarming trend of prices escalating at an alarming rate. To put it in different terms, the situation for the United States of America is completely and unequivocally stuck, and it is firmly and resolutely stuck in the short term without any signs of progress or resolution in sight. So we are not discussing something that will happen in the future, at some place, in maybe a couple of years from now. No, the main idea is that we will need to commence infusing more money into the economy in approximately 2 to 3 months from now. There is no money in the global economy. The standard of living of the population is declining. I have to remind you, this year is completely centered around the elections. And this is the exact moment where everything goes wrong, just like I was previously mentioning. If the standard of living of the population decreases, it inevitably and significantly raises political tension, resulting in a notable increase in the level of societal unrest. That is precisely what occurred in the USSR in the late 1980s. That is the reason why numerous experts draw a parallel between the United States of America today and the USSR in 1989 to 1990, since the decade of the 1990s. Some people don't understand where this association comes from. Well, like I just explained, that's where she came from. But this particular situation, the decline in living standards, it ultimately leads to some truly heavy and significant consequences. The United States of America was in the process of constructing a system of global control through the distribution of money on a worldwide scale. If Great Britain managed to achieve it through intricate covert combinations, employing both rewards and punishments, essentially utilizing the Peresovsky method, then the United States of America acquired the elites through financial means, effectively buying their loyalty and influence in the process. Nevertheless, they were acquiring the favor of the elites within a particular framework. At this moment, I would like to emphasize what occurred to the well-known Russian oligarchs, Avin and Friedman, who were prominent figures in the business world. Why weren't they accepted in London, even though they seemed to have cooked up their armor? And it is actually quite simple, because they were given the opportunity to earn income from the profits that Russia generates. In other words, to become beneficiaries of Russia, just like shareholders of a company. This means that they can benefit from the success of Russia and have a stake in its financial outcomes, similar to owning shares in a business. But beneficiaries, not owners. So they believed they were the owners, but in reality, they were merely beneficiaries, receiving benefits in return for guaranteeing Russia's appropriate conduct from the perspective of the West. Subsequently, they departed hastily and fled. They said, we can't do it here, it's all complicated here, there's some Putin here and something else there, we can't influence that. Pay attention, gentlemen, you haven't understood. The capitals you referred to are in dollars, specifically in our currency, not in yours. So either you go back and exert influence on Putin's behavior, or, I'm sorry, but we will take everything from you. Who do you think you are to challenge us? Well, all of a sudden, every single person got it. Each and every individual comprehended that we urgently need to create our own security and guarantees at any cost or price, no matter what it takes or how much it may require. A whole bunch of countries suddenly found out that the money they thought was theirs, well, for example, in Azerbaijan, the money is sitting in British offshore accounts. I would like to remind you that during the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein, the international community began providing assistance to Kuwait in return for gaining control over its valuable oil fields. The world from Kuwait said who he is over there. Why bother? I've got enough money, I'll buy you a private army, and we'll kick Saddam Hussein's ass. Without delay, Britain froze all of his accounts. Those funds belong to her, they are currently in her possession within her respective banking system. So, he wants to pull out that money from the banking system? And who gave him permission? No, if you want to buy a plane or build a new harem building, go ahead. And I definitely cannot withdraw all of the money that is in my account. So, when it became apparent that there were difficulties with finances, including China, all individuals started to seriously contemplate how to protect their money and ensure its safety in light of the emerging challenges. There was no such question. Everyone knew that the money in dollars is sitting in the banks, everything is fine. Now it became clear, no, this is not okay because this system is not a tenant. There are definitely valid reasons behind this. The main issue is the complete lack of demand. So approximately speaking, what is economics? It is a money go-round. The process of production, selling to individuals, and ensuring that the money is reinvested back into production again. If this is a small car, indeed, the rotor, you have the capability to wind a multitude of things on this rotor. This twisted thing can be many times bigger than the rotor itself. But counting on the fact that it will increase. In the book, Memories of the Future, I called it the economic reproduction circuit. So here's the thing. The production circuit of the global economy is shrinking. No, you have the capability to extract more oil. You have the capability to extract more gas from the reserves. However, the demand for the products derived from this oil and gas is declining steadily. The decrease of the global economic reproduction circuit is imminent, as it has been stimulated for over 40 years. This is an inevitable outcome that cannot be avoided. Well, this contraption is dead, it ain't working no more. All the potential places where it could have been. And in this situation, it suddenly transpired that the quantity of amassed possessions which existed, he presumed this significant requirement. Due to the appeal of any asset, it somehow generates demand. As a result, it can either generate direct income from sales, or it can involve various secondary, tertiary, and subsequent assets that are associated with the fact that someone, somewhere, is purchasing something. In the event that your aggregate demand undergoes a decline or decrease in magnitude, today the structural gap in the global economy is roughly equivalent to the structural gap in the United States of America somewhere around 1929, roughly 15 to 20%. Actual incomes are lower compared to the level of demand. These 20% are a mixed origin additive. What is happening? So these here 20%, that is an origin add-on with inflationary effects. And in developed Western nations, the percentage has already surpassed 30%. In the good old USA, over in Western Europe, and all the way out in China, And as a consequence, you will observe a significant reduction in the quantity of assets you possess in the global economy. And each and every one of those items belongs to a specific individual. Consequently, some time ago I expressed that the primary problem of the forthcoming crisis is the destruction of the mechanism that is responsible for validating and legitimizing the rights of ownership. What is the deal with this mechanism of destruction? I understand it, no wonder. Because if you have a total of 10 individuals and each of them believes they possess 100 coins, then the overall count of coins would be 1,000. So it turns out that's a property of 1,000 coins, you know. 10 people, each with 100. Now picture this. A storm, a hurricane occurred, and as a consequence, there were merely 400 coins that remained of the property. Inquiry. What is your strategy for distributing these 400 units among these individuals? Tough guys say, we don't care, we'll take our 100, don't need others, we'll take our 100, you can do as you wish. All right, one or two turn out to be strong, they take their 100. So, 8 people left, each thinks they have assets worth 100, so there are a total of 200 assets left. What's up? Those who realize they won't get anything anymore team up in pairs or threes. They approach those who have taken a stand and say, guys, we need to share. Or, why did you acquire that piece of property that is situated within our designated territory? Yes, we were feeble while you were formidable. And what is the situation now? Have the dynamics changed? Yeah, we definitely walk around in slippers and robes, but hey, at least we have rockets. Planet. There goes your oil tanker. We are going to attempt to shoot it immediately. Gotta share. So here's the matter at hand. The key problem is that those participants in the global process who have even the slightest ability to create independent tools for protecting assets start to figure out, first and foremost, which of their assets they can protect. And by the way, which assets belong to them, in order to effectively safeguard their interests and ensure proper ownership. So, like, here is an operational factory, you know. It is situated on my turf, consuming my electricity and functioning effectively to produce goods. For some reason, the owner is an American company that manages it. No, guys, you see, there's a little mistake here. You're impacting the environment, or you pay fees that are 10 times higher than profits. They are saying, let us go ahead and shut down the aluminum plant. No, you cannot close this factory, because if you do, then, accordingly, we will arrest and put all of the management in jail. That is how it is going to be all over the world. I will say it again. It is not because everyone is so mean. Because everyone turns to the good old United States of America. Guys, you have created assets worth a huge amount, like, the world GDP, $90 trillion. So like every year, $90 trillion are created, The total volume of global assets, you see, amounts to several $100 trillion. Well, taking into consideration that a significant portion of the assets is gradually being destroyed, suddenly, out of nowhere, there is a sudden boom. As a result of the crisis, those assets become exceedingly challenging to sell, particularly the financial ones that are especially impacted by the current situation. The owners did not go anywhere. They state, guys, they make a turn and head towards the United States of America. Either you must find a solution to this problem, or we will take the assets on our territory for ourselves. We are still going to end up with less than what was written on the papers, because our assets on your turf are going up in smoke. Well, okay, but at least they are in control of their own destiny. What options are available for the United States of America to address this challenging situation and make a meaningful impact? Initiate a few dozen rockets in the desert? What are their actual capabilities in terms of system-wide impact? In this particular instance, the cheese bore in Ukraine was connected to the United States of America due to one single reason and no other. Who is going to be the individual responsible for determining the rightful owners of the assets that are situated on the soil of the European continent? Russia stated, "We are going to be involved in this as well." They attempted to restrain her. We tried to snatch it, but it's already clear that we won't give away any Ukrainian land to anyone. This is similar to the land where Russian blood was shed, so it is our land, you know. And all your financial games, yeah, that's where it's at. You guys can't even hold on to the financial system. If you could manage to hold on to the dollar system, maybe we could talk about it. There is nothing to discuss at the moment. Well, yes, you will purchase a certain number of Russian individuals there. You will be given credit for this as well, once a certain amount of time has passed by. Just so you know, the United States of America is trying to snatch up the assets they're interested in from Western Europe, specifically the industrial ones. The United States of America is trying to steal the assets that they are interested in the Middle East. As an illustration, they pilfered all of the captivating historical artifacts from Iraq, and so on, and things of that nature, and similar examples. This is going to end in a bad way, with unfavorable consequences and negative outcomes. Due to the aforementioned outcome, it will be revealed that all of the aforementioned assets that these aforementioned new players can obtain will be in the possession of them. And as a result, there will be major problems in the USA. It's the same situation over there. The individuals who express support for Trump argue that our assets are primarily our industry and our economy. Our assets, what do they say to those who stand behind the Democrats? Printing press? Okay, let's proceed. We will deactivate it at this moment and restore it to the desired high-quality level. They may not be able to bring back the golden standard. The situation itself, it is objective and cannot be influenced by personal opinions. That is the reason why, in a span of 5 years, the most crucial factor will be the individual or group that possesses the necessary means. It is not mandatory for it to be a military force, as the resource could be anything, to safeguard the assets within their reach. That is the reason why these so-called sovereign countries in Eastern Europe will not have any role to play in the current situation that is unfolding before us. They do not have it. First of all, they have nothing. They do not possess any resources. No individual necessitates their land due to the fact that the overall volume of agricultural products is incredibly vast and abundant in magnitude. They do not possess any genuine pharmacies. They also lack any scientific or technological advancements. Here's the thing, the Polish people might try, but the Polish people will be told, like, guys, look, yeah, there are disputed lands here. Yeah, there's Silesia, there's Danzig, there's the Suwalki corridor, and so on. Well, who said this is yours? And there is also Belostok. Who is the one claiming ownership? Can you handle this? All right, well, you have got an army, that's great. Let us wait for 6 months. You have 350,000 people in your army? That's amazing. You need to provide for them for a period of 6 months to a year, and once the number decreases to 50,000, we can discuss further. I can assure you that there will be a whole lot of people interested, and not just in the East, but in the West as well. Now this here is a situation that we have found ourselves in. An objective economic downturn entails an inevitable change in mechanisms for property control, which means that we need to adapt and find new ways to manage our assets during these challenging times. Now that is the key element of the crisis. I have said this so many times, and it is surprising that they still have not gotten it, despite my repeated emphasis on this crucial point. It is particularly intriguing in this situation to observe how the company should behave. Because companies have all these protection mechanisms, they are geared towards that old system, the system of legitimizing property through law, courts, and international organizations, which adds an extra layer of complexity to their decision-making process. Where will all of them be located in 5 years? For whom will the court work on behalf of, that you will make an appeal to? Will you make it to this court? I have already discussed how we even conducted a campaign for the Strategic Forecasting Agency, ARC, 2 years ago, specifically aimed at solving these types of problems that arise in the field of strategic forecasting. We have a clear understanding of the processes that will be taking place, which is why we can confidently say that. I would like to emphasize that the destruction of the old system does not imply that there will be total chaos. The individual who lacks possessions and resources will ultimately achieve victory, surpassing those who are more affluent or privileged in their circumstances. There will be a new order with different principles, and you will just have to restructure your business in accordance with these new principles. However, in order to achieve that, you have to either comprehend the situation. I do not see anyone even thinking about it in any way, shape, or form. Alternatively, you can contact individuals who comprehend it. Therefore, as I previously mentioned, on February 10th, which is approximately in a week and a half, there is going to be a significant traditional yearly conference organized by the Khazin Foundation. During this event, we will be addressing all these matters, you know? At the very minimum, it is logical to go there in order to determine what is happening. However, considering the wider context, it remains vital, absolutely vital, to establish and implement effective systems and processes for adequately preparing and equipping individuals to effectively navigate and respond to this challenging and unprecedented situation. Well, because even if you understand something, but you have a big company and your deputies, department heads, legal department, marketing department, and so on, do not understand what's going on, there is no use or value for them at all. They are essentially ineffective and of no benefit in such a situation. On the contrary, it's nothing but trouble. Well, as experience shows, the overwhelming majority of bankruptcies happen not so much because of the economic situation, but because of management mistakes. In our country, this is fucking awesome. It's well known, but there are mistakes, and there are special ones. So, basically, when a manager sees that things aren't going well for him and he's about to get fired, he gets this urge to steal and run. Begin moving. You must be prepared for this as well. It is crucial to be ready and fully equipped for what lies ahead. Individuals necessitate education. By the way, in this particular sense, it is exceedingly fascinating that when I, together with my unfortunately deceased comrade Sergei Sheglov, penned the book Stairway to Heaven, I did so with a certain level of interest. I mean, I wrote it from the perspective of a hardware career, detailing how to build a successful career in the field of apparatus and equipment. But I was surprised to find that numerous entrepreneurs who own sizable companies were highly interested in studying this book. On certain occasions, we even provided consultations for corporate events as part of our services. Initially, I didn't understand it, but later I understood it. Due to the well-organized corporate governance system, it is highly responsive to this type of scheming and manipulation. If the individuals who are employed there comprehend that everyone in their vicinity also comprehends, then the probability of various types of fraudulent schemes that undermine the stability of the company is significantly diminished. So you have to see, you gotta find the right companies and people who gotta see these behind the scenes mechanisms, you know what I'm saying? When you have a clear understanding of them, the likelihood of mischief drops down significantly in a noticeable manner. It is not very helpful if, for instance, there is a conflict that arises among the shareholders. Nevertheless, even in this specific location, if you possess an understanding of how the gears function, you will perceive this conflict much earlier than it becomes visible to all individuals. The sooner you observed it, the more chances there are to somehow eliminate it and enhance the likelihood of successfully doing so. So, we do not have a lot of time left. What can I possibly say in such a limited amount of time that we have remaining? Political, geopolitical, and other tensions, including tensions between different clans within our country, are expected to persist and further escalate, intensifying in the near future and posing ongoing challenges for our nation. And underneath all of this lies a completely objective economic basis. So, roughly speaking, we're all on a frying pan with a pretty bright fire underneath. Furthermore, he is somewhat still catching fire, which implies that he will grow increasingly stronger. I refrain from engaging in various political, conspiracy, and other discussions regarding the identities of individuals in the Kremlin or Washington, as well as the nature of their relationships. I am aware of how it works because I've seen it in action. However, understanding the mechanisms doesn't mean I'm keeping an eye on who exactly and how these mechanisms are being implemented at present. However, comprehending this tension, that it will unavoidably occur, absolutely necessitates all individuals to construct a defense system, including, first and foremost, the assets you possess, without exception, without delay, and without underestimating the magnitude of the threat it poses. Due to the ineffectiveness of the old asset protection mechanisms, they are no longer viable. Even if you have, as they say, a solid roof over your head, it might not help, because the roof can say, there's this thing, I urgently need a resource, so why don't you give it to me? Because the roof can unexpectedly disappear. Because the roof can have troubles. She'll say, sorry, not now for you. And so on and so forth. And above all, the mechanisms that this roof utilized to safeguard your assets, they have the potential to cease functioning due to objective factors that are beyond your control. And this, my friends, is the genuine kicker that will leave you astounded and speechless without a doubt. Well, I simply want to remind everyone once more that the quantity of assets in the world which currently exist, that is, the number of individuals who believe they possess something, is considerably larger than the quantity of assets that will exist in 5 years from now. And due to this, a lot of people will lose everything. And there is nothing you can do about it. You just have to get ready and minimize the risks that are involved. Well, once again, I invite everyone on February 10th to our conference. Well, that's a wrap for us. Mikhail Khazin was present. Thanks for your attention. Goodbye. The subtitles were created by Dima Torzok, who is a professional text rewriter with expertise in accurately conveying meaning while maintaining word count. In the meeting, Putin said L-76 plane shot down by U.S. system Patriot. He explained, info accurate and confirmed by expertise.